always do that.
I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire.
Quenching my thirst. What is going on, bookworms? You beautiful bookworms. And welcome back to another episode of Bookmarks with Bump. I am your host, Bump, aka at my job, Sean Cote. That's what they know me as. What you know me as is the former addict turned endurance runner, turned tradesman, turned jack of all trades and master of none. And I'm back with another hot one, fresh off the presses. Here we are, number 33. Can you believe we've made it this far? Any other man with a normal thinking brain in their head would have stopped by now. I've put out a couple of episodes that are just, to be honest with you, quite junk. Today's episode, though, not the same. This one we got coming up is a banger. And I'm going to start right off the rip with a little bit of regulations here, because life is a roller coaster. You are going to go through ebbs and flows of life. You are going to deal with things that are out of your control, and it's going to make you feel some types of ways, but it's important to understand the only thing that you can control when it comes to an outcome that's derived from another person is your perspective, your reaction to things. All that matters is your reaction. That's all you have control over. And today we're going to talk about things that are going to garner a reaction out of you. So I want to go through how to regulate different negative emotions before we reach the point where we're going to get into some negative emotions, because there's been a lot going on. It's crazy because for the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks of the year, there's been a lot going on, but we're entering a new era here we're entering a new era here now. So there's even more going on. Can you believe that? So learn something. Cool Tech Tips put out a thread, how to regulate different negative emotions. And I thought, wow, this is really great. All right. When I feel angry, I will pause until I'm able to think clearly so I can respond rationally instead of reacting. Being reactive is a turnoff. Being reactive is a trait that shows a weakness of character. It also shows the fact that you're not comfortable when something doesn't go your way. Usually, if you're angry, that's because things are happening that you're not quite agreeing with. Well, there's only one way for you to handle it once it's already done, and that's how you react to it. Take a breath and understand that what's done is done. You can't change anything. How will you change moving forward? And that's your response, how you're going to move forward from it. When you're feeling overwhelmed, write down what you need to get done and focus on one task at a time based on importance. This is a huge thing when it comes to personal training, when it comes to physical fitness. You look at the big picture. I'm this, I want to be this. Okay, now that's one way, that's A to B. But in between A to B, there's A1, 2, 3, 4. There are a million steps that you have to take in order to get to B. I like to look at things in chunks. When you're looking at a big mess, when you're looking at, for instance, at my job, when there's a setup that seems impossible, one step at a time, one task at a time to make sure I knock off all the boxes and get what I need to get done. Things are much more easily conquerable. Mountains are much easier to climb when you take them one step at a time. When you feel insecure, work on appreciating and accepting yourself, flaws and all. And you're more than you give yourself credit for. We absolutely are. We are all individuals that come with our own quirks, and sometimes you may feel like you're less than when it comes to the next person. But the greatest president of all time, Theodore Roosevelt, said it best. Comparison is the theft of joy. Don't compare yourself to anything else. Compare you to you. Where you are today is not where you're going to be tomorrow, and where you are tomorrow isn't where you ultimately want to be in the long run. One step at a time, and give yourself credit for the work you're doing in the moment. When you feel rejected, acknowledge that this feeling sucks, but don't let it consume you. Rejection is redirection. When you're feeling discouraged, be kind to yourself and remind yourself of the reason why you're trying. And use that reason as your strength. Your reason why is always more important than your how. Your why is more important than your what. Your why should be the most important thing that you have in your life because that's going to drive you forward no matter what it is. And when you're feeling anxious, focus on the present moment and take deep breaths to regulate the nervous system. A lot of times when I'm experiencing anxiety, one of the things that I'm realizing is that I'm thinking that I'm leaving my body. I'm thinking that the earth isn't real. I'm thinking unrealistically. And one way to ground yourself and get back to reality is to take deep breaths, connect yourself with the ground, and look around. Take a note of 3 different colors and look for 3 different things in the room that are those 3 colors. And you quickly realize, oh, reality is real and I'm in it. And now we know how to regulate our emotions. So let's get into some emotional things that have been going on. We've been talking for the last 2 weeks about the fires in LA, and they are still raging. I talked a lot last week about how these fires could be something that are, they could be stopped, but they're not being stopped, and there must be a reason as to why. Well, Zane Bizboost put out a thread. Rumors say the deep state burned down Los Angeles. Their plan, wipe out LA and rebuild it as a futuristic smart city. No cars, green energy, public transportation, and there's one man who's allegedly behind it all. Here's the dark truth behind the LA fires, and this thread is accompanied with a picture of Klaus Schwab. If anybody knows of Klaus Schwab, you'll know about the World Economic Forum and really that one world government that we've been scared of our whole lives, where that actually is originating from. Is this man in the World Economic Forum the brightest and smartest people in the world, who are really only the brightest and smartest people in the world because they have the most amount of money? They all get together and decide what we should be doing with the rest of our lives. Klaus Schwab is a man who's been on record saying, I will own nothing and I will like it. Well, what I like is my freedom and my autonomy. I don't think not owning anything is really going to be anything that I'm looking forward to, Klaus. And why should I take you seriously with a name like Klaus? Anyhow, we'll move forward into the thread, but remember to regulate your emotions going through this, because this is going to be some upsetting stuff going forward for the rest of the podcast. 2 years ago, the World Economic Forum published an article about modern 15-minute smart cities. It's labeled as a modern way to live as efficiently and as green as possible. Everything you need to live can be reached in 15 minutes. Work, doctors, groceries, but there's more behind it. If you want to leave your 15-minute area, you must apply for it. You can't move from place to place like we can now, which is a constitutional right, the freedom of passage. You would also not be allowed to eat meat, buy endless new clothes, or travel like you want. Everything is limited, but why is this related to LA? LA will be a smart city in 2028. The plan is to redesign the city to prepare for the Olympics in 2028. No cars, no public transportation. No cars in favor of public transportation and high-density housing. Smart and efficient like the 15-minute city proposed by Klaus Schwab, founder of the World Economic Forum. The $40 billion 28 by 28 initiative is the heart of LA's transformation. It includes 28 infrastructure projects, metro and extensions, including the Purple Line connecting key neighborhoods, a car-free approach with venues accessible only by public transit. At LAX, a new automated people mover is designed to revolutionize travel. Fully electric, arriving every 2 minutes, connected to parking rental car hubs in LA's metro, designed to reduce 42 million car trips annually. Effective, green, and seamless. The Olympic Village will minimize new construction by repurposing existing facilities. Sustainable and cost-effective design. Focus on reducing the environmental footprint and a showcase for LA's ability to adapt without overbuilding. Let's cover the rumors. Some claim the fires were planned to make LA's transformation easier. Here's why they think that. Canceled fire hydrant inspections. Water reservoirs mysteriously emptied before the fires broke out. Insurance cancellations forcing residents to sell. Their theory? Burning a city to the ground makes building the high-density housing plan for LA's smart city easier. Whether intentional or not, these disasters are reshaping LA's future. And 2028 will reveal the truth. What's your take on this? Attention is the new oil. The more qualified. Oh, this is an ad. Okay. So, there are also more video sources when you go through the thread here at the bottom of it. And as always, I implore you to go hit the links in the descriptions and follow along with the threads. There are many videos that come along with this. But yes, burning a city to the ground makes building the high-density housing plan for LA's smart city easier. I don't necessarily think it's all to do with the Olympics. I think this is more of a bought and paid for idea where Klaus Schwab is somebody who's probably been in Gavin Newsom's ear quite a bit. It seems like somebody who would have quite a bit of influence with the government in California. They are all very institutionalized, established, part of the institutions, part of the people who are paying Zuckerberg to keep things off of Facebook, part of the people who have been the hypocrites of our time. I mean, Nancy Pelosi being in San Francisco and telling people that we need to follow along with the COVID restrictions. Meanwhile, she's out at salons not wearing masks. Gavin Newsom being part of the strictest when it comes to COVID regulations. Also being at his Napa Valley wine orchard, winery. What do they call it? I don't know what they call a vineyard where they make the grapes for wines. But he has one. And he was there doing things that he was telling people not to do. So, with that being said, these people are, in my opinion, based off their hypocrisy, part of the culprits, part of the reasons as to why there's so much dissent and so much distrust between the government and the citizens of the United States. And here we are in the middle of a crisis, and we find out how poorly maintained the forests were. We find out the reservoirs were being emptied. We find out that fire hydrants, who knows if they were in spec or not, because they hadn't even been checked. The facility that I work in, the safety officer who works for us, he comes around every single week and checks every single fire extinguisher. Now, granted, that's much different than going through a whole 30 million, going through a whole city that's populated by 30 million people and checking every fire hydrant. But that's what you pay city workers for. That's what you pay your fire departments for. That's what you have a budget for. And it's not just one person doing all the work. And it's not just one person who has all the blame. There is a cabinet of people over there in California who are mishandling many, many things. But this is part of the problem. When you find out information like this, it gives you a sour taste in your mouth. And we've had quite a bit of changes. There was a thread that came out a few weeks ago that I didn't really get around to. It actually came out on January 6th, which is quite ironic. But Ukraine's President Zelensky, went deep with Lex Friedman. They had a 2-hour podcast that came out, and he revealed why he believes Trump is the key to ending the war, how 5 nations betrayed Ukraine's trust, and Russia's plans are bigger than anyone realizes. There are 11 insights that go through in this thread, put out by Fernando Cao, and we'll begin with this. Number 1, his grandfather's World War II story shapes everything. He was the last surviving brother of the Zelensky family. The rest were executed by Nazis. Some were buried alive. After working in criminal investigation post-war, he taught Volodymyr Zelensky about justice, and that drives Zelensky's worldview. Number 2 is Zelensky's perspective on the start of the war. February 24th, 2022, 3:40 to 3:45 a.m. He was home with his family when missiles struck. His response is that he was no longer a father. His country became his family. He became the father to his country. He went back into his office and he never looked back. The Lukashenko revelation. Early in the war, Belarus's leader called to apologize. It wasn't me. I'm not in charge. Putin launched from our territory. This exposed the first cracks in Putin's facade. The Trump factor. Putin is afraid of Trump Zelensky states. He believes January 25th could be symbolic for Trump flying to Kyiv, potential for real peace talks, and the first leader to arrive by plane. The world holds its breath. And this is an interesting tidbit because when Putin was interviewed by Tucker Carlson last year, or the beginning of last year, one thing that came out was that Biden hadn't spoken to Putin since February of 2022. Now, we're throwing billions of dollars into this war, but we're not trying to negotiate peace. That seems like a backwards tactic to me. But hey, who am I? I'm just a tradesman with an apprenticeship card. And anyway, number 5 is the Budapest betrayal. In 1994, Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons for security guarantees from the U.S., from Russia, Britain, France, and China. When Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, no one even answered Ukraine's calls. The ceasefire trap. Zelensky warns a ceasefire without guarantees is catastrophic, because Putin would use it to study tactics, rebuild forces, and stockpile weapons, and ultimately plan an even bigger invasion. This is Zelensky's reasoning as to why the war couldn't stop and why we needed to send him much more money. The North Korea connection, which we talked about last week, the numbers are staggering. North Korea sent Russia through 3.7 million artillery rounds. Europe gave Ukraine only 1 million. The deeper meaning is that Putin's preparing for longer war. I don't think Putin's willing to stop until all of Ukraine is his at this point. Number 8 is Zelensky's 3-part solution is clear. Partial NATO membership for controlled territories. Use $300 billion of frozen Russian assets for defense and to keep energy sanctions to cut war funding. This isn't about ending the war, it's about preventing the next one, which is something that I agree with. As much as we need to end the war, we need to make sure that conflict is done. Continuing conflict or opening up a chance for another conflict is a problem. However, what the problem is here is the partial NATO membership. The whole issue that Putin had to begin with, and what he claims, is that he doesn't want NATO on his borders. I see that to be an understandable claim. I don't see violence like this or on this level to be something that's beneficial for anybody. However, how do you reason with a man with millions of artillery shells being sent to him? Number 9 is the domino theory. Putin's next targets are Georgia, which is already turning, Moldova's parliament, which is being reinstated in April, former Soviet states, and eventually all of Europe. This isn't speculation. It's happening now. I think it's speculation. Okay? Now, the Moldova parliament, this would be some type of coup, instating governmental figures to take over the parliament in Moldova. If you ask me, who are we to stop something like that if that's something that we do all across the world? We have flipped many regimes. When you talk about the Arab Spring and taking over Libya, in the governments that came into Iraq, that was all because of us. We caused all of these revolutions. Why is it fair for us to do that in certain regions of the world, but not for other people? I think ultimately the citizens will decide what they want, if it's decided through vote. And if that's the case, let it be. Number 10 is the democracy challenge. Under martial law, Zelensky faces impossible choices. He can't hold elections, security risks in wartime voting, 20% of the population has fled abroad, and you can't vote in occupied regions. Democracy needs peace to function, but we need strength to achieve peace. The security reality is that Zelensky was crystal clear. Security guarantees without the U.S. are meaningless. History proves this from World War II to today. American power has been the decisive factor. And crucially, Putin fears U.S. strength more than any other nation. This conversation between Lex and Zelensky shows the raw power of leadership storytelling. One conversation, millions of minds changed. The digital age has given us unprecedented reach, and the nature of war, leadership, and enforcing change has altered forever. And this is true. When you look at something like a CNN sit-down or a 60-minute sit-down, it's a longer interview that's cut up into tiny pieces to get key talking points out there. Something like this with Lex, or even the Tucker Carlson Putin interview from last year, that is much more of a deeper dive. That is lifting the veil much more and giving us a better chance to kind of do our own research. Ultimately, I think that's what we really need to do in situations like this. We can't have our opinions be swayed or be dictated towards us. We have to form our own opinions. My opinion on this is this. We cannot be the reality, the security guarantee reality. We cannot do that. We cannot afford to do that. We've sent hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, and still this war rages on. What more does he want? Does he want our troops over there? I don't want that. Our troops don't want that. And I believe much of the world doesn't want that, because that would just further escalate things. I think in reality, what we need to do is step back. We should negotiate peace talks. Peace talks are the most important thing. Negotiating peace, if we want to sit down and be the mediator, I believe that's a role that we should fit into. We know how to keep peace because we do it over here. We've had nobody encroach on our borders as long as we've been a nation. I think we know how to keep our country safe, and maybe that's the workshop that we should be giving out. Instead of giving out weapons, instead of giving out billions or millions of dollars, we should give workshops on how to keep your country's borders safe. Speaking of borders, I have executive orders. On Monday, Donald Trump was inaugurated. In his second inauguration, in an indoor inauguration, probably to keep his head safe from whizzing bullets, the only indoor inauguration to happen since Ronald Reagan's back in the 80s. But on the first day of Trump's second presidency, he had a busy wrist. He was signing executive orders, and I have a thread put out by Mario Nafal. Trump wasted no time on his return to the presidency, signing a wave of executive orders on his first day in office. From border security to government reform, energy policy and pardons, the actions reflect his campaign promises to bring back common sense and restore his America First agenda. Here's a full breakdown of every executive order Trump signed on day one. And here's where I think he won. Using the term common sense politics and using the term America First. And I think that's a lot of what's been on people's mind ever since this Ukraine war started. We've watched us filter billions and billions of dollars over into Ukraine, and all we've noticed are things getting worse around here. Now, yes, we've focused on making people feel included and making people feel comfortable. Is that the most important thing when it comes to making a country work? I remember prices when Trump was president. Things were nice. I was making good money. I was changing my life. And I think a lot of us just want that world back. We want to put ourselves first. Because without us being 100%, how are we supposed to take care of anybody else in the world? The thread goes on. Number 1, Trump declares national emergency at the border. This move empowers the Secretary of Defense to deploy military forces quickly and redirect federal resources to address the border crisis, which there is one. Number 2, Trump ends catch and release. Trump signed an executive order officially ending the federal catch and release program. This policy had allowed migrants who entered illegally to stay in the U.S. while awaiting asylum decisions. Number 3, Trump reinstates Remain in Mexico policy. This requires asylum seekers to remain in Mexico while their claims are processed, reducing strain on U.S. immigration facilities. This policy aims to deter illegal crossings and prevent system abuse. Trump resumes border wall construction. First initiated during his previous term, the wall is a key part of his strategy to preventing illegal crossings. This order directs contractors to resume work without delay. Number 5, Trump designates cartels as global terrorists. This designation allows for tougher measures to target cartel operations, including financial networks and leadership. Trump called this step necessary to combat drug trafficking and human smuggling. And this is probably the biggest of them all. To Designate cartels as global terrorist groups is not only big for what we can do to prevent illegal crossings, to prevent drugs coming in, it also keeps people in Mexico safe, and you might not realize this. There are some people who are paying $5 to $10 to $15,000 to be smuggled into the country. Say the smuggling is unsuccessful, that money's still gone. And these people, everything they've worked for years is now lost. Asylum seekers staying in Mexico, is that really an issue? I don't think it is. And let me look at it from this perspective. As somebody who's been looking for, as somebody who's been applying for apartments and getting into new places, I put in applications for these places. That doesn't mean that I can go squat in that apartment until my application is approved. That's illegal. Number 6, Trump suspends refugee resettlement for 4 months. The pause is a part of his border strategy to address what he calls the migrant invasion of America. It also saves our government a ton of money. We give out cards filled with money to people who are coming into the country to make sure that they have a means to live for the next few months while they wait on their decision. I think we can do better things with that money. I mean, I live here in Northwest Connecticut where the roads are bumpier than a pubis with razor burns. I don't know. Anyway, we need to start working on some infrastructure here in this country, and we're not going to be able to do it when we're giving out millions of dollars to people who don't live here. Number 7, Trump changes birthright citizenship rules. The 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to those born in the U.S., but Trump's order challenges that interpretation. Number 8 is that there are troops deployed to the border. Trump authorized the deployment of military forces to the southern border through an executive order. This directive tasked the U.S. Northern Command with repelling mass migration, drug trafficking, and human smuggling. Trump orders enhanced border vetting. This measure aims to close the loopholes and strengthen processes to identify and block security threats, such as terrorists entering this country. Number 10, Trump ends government censorship. This order directs agencies to cease any actions that suppress free speech, framing it as a restoration of First Amendment rights. Number 11, federal hiring and regulation freeze. He specifically targeted the IRS for a hiring freeze and ordered federal workers to return to their offices. Sounds like a good boss. Number 12, Trump targets the weaponization of government. This move aims to restore fairness and prevent partisan misuse of federal power, which he was under the fire of throughout his whole campaign. 78 Biden orders rescinded. This rollback targets policies that Trump says undermined American prosperity and national security. Security clearances were revoked. Trump revoked security clearances for former officials who signed a letter claiming Hunter Biden's laptop was false. Why would he do that? Well, if you ask me, this is a great move because these people showed their true colors by doing what they did with the Biden laptop. What do you want to call it? The Biden laptop fiasco that we dealt with during the 2020 election. I mean, when you censor people from free speech, when you censor people from sharing information, and then you as a government official come out and say these types of false, when you come out and have these types of false statements, you're misleading American people. And if that's the case, you don't belong in the government. 15 is the death penalty has been restored. This order directs the Attorney General to ensure states have the access to necessary lethal injection drugs. Now, granted, this is something crazy because we're killing people here. I also think it's something that could benefit us in the long run as a whole. The death penalty is something that scares the life out of people. How likely is a criminal going to be a violent and angry criminal if they know their life is on the line? I think it gives people a chance to step back and understand the decisions that they're making and how long they could last moving forward. Number 16 is reforming policy-making federal position. positions. Trump reclassified federal roles with policymaking authority to enhance accountability. This policy reinstates a system to dismiss underperforming or insubordinate employees more easily. Trump framed it as necessary to ensure federal staff align with his administration's goals. I also think this is great going forward outside of the Trump administration. Accountability is the number one thing that will stop mistakes. People are afraid to lose their jobs more than anything. I can pull up instances at my job where people are afraid to say they made a mistake and they let them slide, and it's all because they're afraid to lose their job. When in reality, if you take accountability for something, if you have accountability in a situation, you're going to be, people will take it easier on you. Why? Because you're showing your honesty, you're showing a fact that you're genuine, and it shows that you care. When you take accountability, you're showing outwardly that you care about the work that you put out. Number 17, Trump addresses cost of living crisis. The directive focuses on reducing financial burdens on American families through targeted actions and reforms. That's great. Maybe rent will go down. Number 18 is the American First foreign policy implemented. Trump signed an executive order to implement an American First foreign policy at the State Department. The order mandates all operations, policies, and programs to prioritize U.S. interests above globalist agendas. 19. U.S. foreign aid suspended for 90 days. Yes. Trump paused all U.S. foreign assistance programs for 90 days via executive order. The suspension allows for a review to ensure aid aligns with the administration's policy goals, which is great. Let's take a second to step back from being the world's piggy bank and let's focus on the most important things first. 20. Trump rejects global tax deal. Trump issued an order rejecting the commitments to the OECD global tax deal made under the previous administration. The order safeguards American companies from extraterritorial taxation and discriminatory practices. It also tasked the Treasury and trade representatives with proposing protective measures against unfair foreign tax policies. 21. Trump declares national energy emergency. He declared a national energy emergency, rolling back leasing for wind farms and ending Biden's electric vehicle mandate. The order also reduces regulatory hurdles for oil and gas production to revive American manufacturing and boost energy exports globally. Trump framed the move as critical to energy independence and economic growth. 22. Trump withdraws from the Paris Climate Agreement again. The withdrawal process will take years, making the U.S. one of the few nations not bound by the accord. Trump opens Alaska's oil reserves. He signed an order unlocking the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska for oil drilling. The directive also cuts red tape on oil and natural gas production, aiming to unleash the state's resource potential. And what people might not understand about this is something that could benefit Ukraine. Russia is, without a doubt, one of the largest exporters of oil in the world. If we become a large exporter of oil, and if we can do it at a cheaper rate than Russia, we'll take away business from them. And if we take away their business, we take away their money. If we take away their money, we take away their weapons. Being a consumer in the world is not the position you want to be in. You want to be a creator. You want to be somebody who's creating supply, somebody who's in demand. This is the number one way that we can become in demand again. Trump halts offshore wind expansion. He paused offshore wind lease sales and approvals through an executive order. The directive temporarily halts all permits and loans for wind projects onshore and offshore. Trump cited the need to prioritize traditional energy sources and their economic benefits. 25 is Trump establishes the Department of Government Efficiency. Co-led by Elon and Vivek, the agency aims to eliminate overspending and streamline federal operations. He delayed the TikTok ban. He signed an executive order granting TikTok a 75-day reprieve from a nationwide ban, but under certain conditions. Flags at full staff on Inauguration Day. Trump signed an order mandating flags be flown at full staff on all future inauguration days. The directive clarifies protocol after Biden's earlier half-staff order for President Carter's death caused confusion. Trump said the move ensures a consistent national tradition. Traditions are great. 28. Trump appoints officials in signing ceremony. He formally appointed 22 cabinet and non-cabinet officials, 47 sub-cabinet leaders, and 31 acting designates. He handed ceremonial pens to Vice President Vance and congressional leaders during the event. Full pardons for the January 6 rioters. I don't really care about this. I think that a lot of people were wrongfully convicted and put away in prison for January 6th. I also think that there are some people who deserve some time in prison. No matter what your reason is, if you destroy government property, you do have to do some time. 30. Trump limits definitions of gender identity. Trump signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to define individuals by sex, not gender, in policies and documents. The order restricts gender identification options to those assigned at birth. Trump ends federal DEI programs. An executive order eliminates funding for federal diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. It directs the Office of Management and Budget to determine any illegal mandates or preferences. Some people will say this is racist. I just say this is somebody who wants what's best. Bring the best people in. It doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, or what they look like. Bring in the best people. We need more meritocracies in the world. Trump makes merit the basis for federal hiring. Trump signed an order requiring federal hiring to be based solely on merit. Our country will be based on merit again, is a quote from Donald J. Trump. 33. Trump withdraws from the World Health Organization. He criticized the organization for its handling of global health crises and alleged biases. Trump reinstates service members expelled over vaccine mandates. Trump signed an order reinstating military members dismissed for refusing COVID-19 vaccines with full back pay. He also directed the military to end radical political theories and social experiments within its ranks. 35. The Gulf of Mexico will be renamed to the Gulf of America. He described the change as a symbol of reclaiming American pride and identity. Trump restores the name of Mount McKinley. He reinstated the name Mount McKinley for Alaska's tallest peak, replacing Denali. The 2015 name change under Obama's administration had honored its native Alaskan heritage. Cool, I guess. I mean, shout out to President McKinley. I believe that's what it was named originally. I don't really think that's really that important, but when you look through all of this, you're looking at making common sense a real thing again and making it the most important thing. I think we should be based on merit. I think that's something that we've lost sight of because we want everybody to feel comfortable. And yes, should people feel comfortable? Yes, of course they should, but you got to understand maybe everything's not acceptable. And we've become a place where everything is acceptable because people are too concerned with being nice. Being nice and being kind are two completely different things. Being kind is saying the things that people need to hear. And being nice is just saying what people want to hear. Listen, in order to grow, in order to be the best version of yourself, you're going to have to go through some uncomfortable moments. And typically that happens when you're hearing the truth. And the truth can hurt. The truth can hurt because it's not what you want to hear. Be kind. Tell people what they need to hear. Be the friend who's an asshole sometimes just because they're trying to lead you in the right direction. I've taken on that role a long time ago, and I'm not afraid to be an asshole because I know where my intentions lie. I know I just want what's best for my people. And that's the most important thing to me. But that's enough. All right, so we went over the politics. We went over why Zelensky likes Trump. We went over what Trump did in his first day. Let's go over something a little bit different.
Here we go! Buck, here we go! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go! Yeah, here we go!
Buck, here we go. First and foremost, I'd like to give a congratulations to the 2024-25 national champion of the college football playoff, the Ohio State Buckeyes, who won in what turned out to be a overtime. Well, not an overtime, but it turned out to be quite the thrilling game with a 34-23 victory over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who made it all the way to the end. Marcus Freeman, being a former Buckeye, led the Notre Dame Fighting Irish through the playoff and towards a comeback with 16 points in the second half. Notre Dame came out with a 10-minute long drive where they ran the ball time after time again, sucked time off the clock, sucked energy out of the Buckeyes, and put a touchdown. They were the first to score. Riley Leonard, with 17 carries, 40 yards, and 1 touchdown, was the leading rusher, and that turned out to be the problem. Typically, you have a 3-headed monster of Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, and Jadarian Price, but Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love would then only go on to combine for 16 yards. Riley Leonard did a lot through the air, which showcased a lot of things that he didn't showcase all year, and I think that was an important performance for him to put together to end off the season. Will Howard being Will Howard, 17 for 21, 231 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins with 2 touchdowns on the ground. They just dominated from that point in the first quarter all the way through. They put up 21 points in the second quarter and really ran away with it, and ended up kicking a field goal late in the game to kind of give the Irish the what's what. However, moving on from college football, what we focus on here on Bookmarks and Bump is the NFL, and our first game of the weekend was a Kansas City Chiefs win over the Houston Texans, 23-14. A great game. I mean, it really was a great game, but one thing that I noticed, and I hate to say it, is that it just seems like these Chiefs are they're not the team they were in 2019 where everybody was rooting for them. As a matter of fact, I have a thread here from ML Football. The NFL refs screwed over the Houston Texans on 10 awful calls today alone. One of the most ever, with the refs favoring KC, has become a common theme this season. Refs somehow call a roughing the passer on Houston on a Will Anderson bat. It seemed like every time there was a second down or a third down, they were calling a roughing the passer and gifting the Chiefs 15 yards at a time. And that really, as I was watching this game and listening to Troy Aikman even giving the business to the referees, was quite interesting because you never really see that out of the commentary. They kind of just go along with the flow of the game. But it's unexcusable the way they treat and favor this team. The Chiefs would get away with an obvious hip drop tackle, which is now supposed to be called a penalty. It's a dangerous tackle that has been the cause of many blown out knees, and they were just letting the Chiefs get away with it. Mahomes flopped on the sideline, and this is kind of listen, go through this thread when you listen to this and look at the way that this guy plays. What he reminds me of is the only difference between Pat Mahomes and James Harden is rings. Pat Mahomes has become the James Harden of the NFL by finding any way he can to draw a foul. And that's disgusting. Just play the game. I mean, now, don't get me wrong. Patrick Mahomes' lone touchdown pass in this game was phenomenal. He was falling flat on his face and found a way to find an open Travis Kelce in the end zone. And it was a beautiful pass. And them two together, they pair together well, and they make all the plays they need to make happen. I mean, maybe I'm salty because the Patriots aren't in the playoffs this year, but honestly, I don't really think I am. Watching the game and seeing what I saw, it was just kind of disappointing, to say the least. Mahomes was sacked 3 times. They really got after Mahomes. I'm sure there were probably 2 or 3 more sacks that they ended up calling roughing the passer that don't fall into the stat sheet. But it doesn't matter because on the other side, C.J. Stroud was hounded. Between Frank Clark and George Karlaftis, he took 8 sacks throughout the game. And you can't win with that formula. He went on to throw for 245 yards. Joe Mixon would run for 88. They put together a great game. Nico Collins with 81 yards. But they just didn't get into the end zone enough or often enough. And I mean, it would have been 23-12 if Matt Ariza didn't take that 18-yard safety at the end of the game just to drain time off the clock. MVP of that game is Travis Kelce. Now, Travis Kelce, with a down year, with a down season, coming into the playoffs, he's going to perform. This is the Pat and Trav show every game moving forward. If they do move forward past this week, Travis Kelce had 7 receptions for 117 yards and a touchdown, showing off in front of his girlfriend, the beautiful, the wonderful Taylor Swift. That was a great way to start football Saturday, and football Sunday, another great, thrilling game. The Washington Commanders headed into Detroit to play the Detroit Lions, who were the number 1 seed coming off a bye. Jared Goff would throw for 313 yards, about 113 of those coming after Teddy Bridgewater was put in for his first snap back in the NFL after Jared Goff suffered a concussion in that game. Jahmyr Gibbs would carry the ball 14 times for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jameson Williams ran in a 61-yard touchdown. Ben Johnson not pulling any stops, not saving any plays for the Chicago Bears, his new job moving forward, but trying everything to get a win in the playoffs and advance into the NFC Conference Championship. But they didn't. Last week I spoke about how the Commanders doinked one in off the field goal post to advance in the playoffs. And here they are. I said this was going to be a battle of which team is the team of destiny. And it looks like the Commanders are that team. With a 14-point fourth quarter, they took on the comeback, and they won 45-31 in a thrilling shootout. Jaden Daniels 1 yard shy of 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brian Robinson Jr. with 2 touchdowns on the ground. Jeremy McNichols with a touchdown on the ground. Terry McLaurin found his way into the end zone, and so did Zach Ertz. What's interesting about this is before this game, there was a quote from Amon-Ra St. Brown, how he remembered about the Commanders drafting De'Ami Brown ahead of him. Well, De'Ami showed up with 6 receptions and 98 yards, having one of his best performances of the season on 8 targets. It was definitely a point to get De'Ami the ball in this game, and he did. And so the Commanders will advance to face the winner of the 3:30 p.m. game that was on Sunday. Starting off football Sunday, the Philadelphia Eagles took on the LA Rams in a snow globe game. This game was so fun to watch as it started with fresh grass and Jalen Hurts scampering for a 44-yard touchdown. It quickly turned into a blizzard, and Jalen Hurts would move away from the passing game. He got hounded in this game. As we talked about C.J. Stroud taking 8 sacks in a loss, Jalen Hurts took 7 sacks in a win. But Joe Mixon and Saquon Barkley, they're not the same. Saquon Barkley with another 200-yard game, boosting his average against the Rams this season to 230 yards a game and 3 touchdowns a game. Saquon Barkley, 26 carries, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He took off Week 18. He said, I don't want to play in this game. I want to play in the playoffs. I don't care. Whatever's best for the team. I'm focused on a championship, and it looks like it. Matt Stafford would throw for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. Puka Nacua not having the greatest game this week, but that's probably due to the secondary of the Philadelphia Eagles, who is, they're so talented. They are uber talented. They're tough. They play heady. They play smart, and they really locked down Puka, who had 14 targets and only 6 receptions. But he still managed to get 97 yards because he's just that tough. Demarcus Robinson stepped up in this game big time, finding his way to the ball in crucial moments. And that's just what happens when you have an experienced quarterback like Matt Stafford. I knew it wasn't going to be the easiest game for the Eagles, but they still pulled it off. And that's definitely thanks to the legs of Saquon Barkley. So the Eagles will play the Commanders in an NFC East showdown moving forward on Sunday on championship weekend. The cap of the week, the Ravens and the Bills. This is the MVP versus the MVP. This is the team versus a team. Now, We know the Chiefs are going to win because of the way they just always find a way to win. But this was the game that was going to say who's the best team in the AFC, who has the best shot in the AFC. And going into it, I thought it would be the Ravens. The Ravens won in the regular season, 35-10. This game would not seem to be the same. Buffalo exploded in the second quarter for 2 touchdowns, and that would be all of the difference because they held on to that lead moving forward. There was a moment in this game where it could have been tied. Unfortunately, Mark Andrews, my thoughts go out to Mark Andrews because he's a great player. It just was not a great moment for him there at the end of the game. Lamar Jackson with 254 yards. However, the turnovers would be the thing that changed the day. Josh Allen threw no interceptions. He also threw no touchdowns, but they didn't lose any fumbles. The Ravens would turn the ball over 3 times total in the game, and that would be the deciding factor. 3 total turnovers, 2 extra points for the Bills, and that's what changed everything. I'd like to see Derrick Henry getting more of the ball in a game like this, but they were playing from behind, so I understand them throwing. And they throw with success. Lamar Jackson was only sacked twice, which is surprising to me because how do you even get to that guy? But Isaiah Likely, Rashad Bateman, and Mark Andrews all came up with 4 or 5 receptions and 60-plus yards for all of them. Derrick Henry only had a chance to carry the ball 16 times in that game. He had a chance for a big reception early in the game, but Lamar kind of floated it in too far behind him. And little critical errors like that would be what decided this game. And it's unfortunate for the Baltimore Ravens, but it is a great sign for the Bills to have another chance at the Chiefs going into the AFC Championship. So, my Super Bowl prediction of the Eagles and the Ravens was almost there, but we're off a little bit. And we can only honestly hope for the Eagles and the Bills. But to be frank with you, and I know I have Eagles fans who are friends, and I'm sorry to say this right now, but I would love to see the Commanders win. And I think the poetic justice behind the Commanders becoming a Super Bowl contender this year is so prevalent because they get rid of a disgusting, decrepit owner who's been causing problems throughout the league for years. And look at what happens. You change ownership, you change leadership in the locker room, you bring in a rookie quarterback, and here you are, fighting for a chance to get into the Super Bowl. The NFC North was supposed to be the wagon of the NFC, with the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings all in it. The Commanders sneaked their way into the playoffs, and look at them here. A chance to win the Super Bowl. Philadelphia is favored by 6 in this game. That will be at the Link in Philadelphia. I don't know if they cover that, but I can see them winning just due to their grittiness and toughness. The way they're able to run the ball is much more effective, especially when they're playing a defense like the Commanders, who have been susceptible to the run and who also just gave up 100-plus yards to Jahmyr Gibbs. He also had 2 touchdowns. So look for another 100-yard game from Saquon Barkley, a couple touchdowns added on top of that. Look for the Eagles to just drain the clock and tire out the Commanders' defense drive after drive. This Kansas City and Buffalo game, anything can happen. The Kansas City line this year is not as stout as they always were. They've had a lot of problems. Joe Thuney playing left tackle, moving from guard to tackle is not an easy thing to do. He's made it look a little bit easier. And that's the beauty of football, is that it's one of the last standing meritocracies. We are going to see the best play the best, and hey, may the best man win. I think the Bills have what they need to take on KC and win. KC is favored by 2 at home at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. But I think if Buffalo can get after the quarterback as well as the Texans did, they could have major success. It's all about keeping that yellow laundry inside of the ref's pockets. Keep your hands down, go for the waist, don't hit anybody in the face, and we should be clear. Don't even hit Pat Mahomes in the shoulder. Don't go to bat the ball when he's throwing it. Just try and knock him down lightly. Hold him, carry him, act like he's your child and you're putting him to bed. Whatever it takes to keep the refs from throwing a flag, that is going to be the Bills' number one option moving forward. They have everything they need to win. They don't have the big names on the outside, but they do have Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakur, who came up huge, Keon Coleman, who's been a phenomenal rookie all year, Dawson Knox, and Dalton Kincaid, dual tight ends on that team. They have weapons all over the field. They just haven't established their name yet. Who has established their name is James Cook. Joe Mixon saw a lot of success running up the middle of the field against Kansas City, and I think that James Cook could piggyback off of that and give the Bills a great chance to win moving forward. As always, please go through the description, click the links, and follow along with the threads as I read through them on the bookmarks. Give me a follow on Twitter at BumpOfTTS. Like, rate, and subscribe on whatever platform of your choosing. And I can't thank you enough for stopping by and listening to another episode of Bookmarks with Bump. As always, it's all love. God bless.
I've been riding a wave like I surf. I've been leaning in and out of work. I could show you what it's worth. Money to the ceiling. I started at the dirt. I've been riding wave like I surf. I've been leaning in and out of work. I could show you what it's worth. Money to the ceiling. I started at the dirt. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go out past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear to God I get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire, man. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go out past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear to God I get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go out past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear to God I get higher, man.